Hello, my name is Jacob Hardy, and today I will be giving a presentation about the paper KEH-Gait towards a mobile healthcare user authentication system by kinetic energy harvesting. This is a list of the original authors of the paper. Most are from the University of New South Wales in Australia, and a couple are from the University of Queensland, also in Australia. So for quick introduction, gait recognition has become an attractive research topic in the area of mobile healthcare systems, gait being the unique way an individual moves while they walk. So the idea behind this research paper is to use gait as a form of user authentication, and specifically to identify users' gait through the voltage signal generated from kinetic energy harvesting, KEH. So basically the motion from the user walking is used to generate electricity, which can be used to power the device, and then the electrical signal that is generated from the kinetic energy harvesting is used to identify the person through their gait. So what is gait? We touched on it briefly on the last slide, but essentially it is the way we move when we walk, the way we move our arms and legs in order to move our center of gravity forward. Interestingly, each individual human's distinct walk is unique, much like how our fingerprints are unique, meaning you can train a person or program a computer to recognize someone by the unique way they walk. So the idea here is to use gait to identify users for authentication purposes for a healthcare system. And usually gait is detected using cameras or accelerometer sensors. Although gait can be used for authentication purposes, high power consumption from accelerometer sampling makes it challenging to adopt in resource-constrained devices like wearables and implanted medical devices. So there are a couple questions that are being considered in this paper with regards to detecting gait through kinetic energy harvesting. Does KEH-based gait detection offer comparable accuracy to that of regular accelerometer-based sampling of gait data? This is measured with regards to pure accuracy, which is measured as a percentage of correct classifications out of a total number of classifications. False negative rate, which is the probability that an authentication system incorrectly rejects the access request from a genuine user, and the false positive rate, which is the probability that the authentication system incorrectly accepts the access request by an imposter. Secondly, does KEH-Gait offer meaningful power savings compared to regular accelerometer-based sampling of gait data? Does this result in increased usability of gait on resource-constrained devices? What is kinetic energy harvesting, or KEH? Kinetic energy harvesting is where electricity is generated from kinetic movement. Specifically in the case of wearables or embedded medical devices, IMDs, it generates electrical power from the normal movements of the user. An older example of this would be an automatic mechanical wristwatch where the natural motions of the wearer provides enough energy to wind the mainspring, making manual winding unneeded, resulting in a watch that seemingly never dies. That's a mechanical process though. In this situation, we need electrical power, meaning a voltage or current is generated from the natural motion of the user. This electrical power can then be stored in a battery or used by the wearable or implanted device. The paper describes two different means of kinetic energy harvesting, piezoelectric and electromagnetic. Electromagnetic energy harvesting uses Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, where current is induced in a coil from the movement of a magnetic field. This works by having a magnet on a spring that will move or oscillate from outside motion. This moves its surrounding magnetic field, which induces a current in the nearby coil. These tend to be a little larger and heavier and might be more suitable as an external mobile power source rather than embedded into small wearable like wristwatches. Piezoelectric energy harvesting is where the energy from bending or straining a material mechanically produces a current or voltage. This works where an inertial mass moves or vibrates or oscillates from motion, causing a piezoelectric material layer to bend or flex back and forth, resulting in an alternating voltage output. These are much smaller and lighter and are much more promising for handheld and wearable devices. So now let's move on into gait as a means of authentication. Why is identifying a person's gait useful? Well, the personal wearable devices market is expected to hit $70 billion by 2025, so there's clearly a lot of interest in this area. You may already be familiar with devices like the Apple Watch or Fitbit devices. The companies that sell these are collecting a lot of healthcare data, and gait data could be useful in understanding users' physical and mental state, as well as to explore potential new healthcare applications. When collecting all this data, it's valuable to be able to reliably know who is using the device. Say, for instance, a health insurance company gives their clients discounts based on how physically active they are. If they can't tell who is wearing the activity tracking device, then it leaves the door open for impersonation type fraud. You could give your tracker to a friend who could go for a run while you sit on the couch and watch TV. Obviously, the insurance company wouldn't want this to be possible, so it becomes important to have some form of authentication on the device to determine definitively who is using that device. Here is a diagram showing the normal gait authentication architecture, where the wearable device records and uploads the gait data to a server from the motion of the user. Then the server checks this data against its knowledge of the user's gait to either give it a pass or a fail on authentication. There are a lot of existing forms of authentication that we have grown accustomed to. Why not use those instead? Why go through the trouble of using a person's gait and not a PIN or their fingerprint or something? Well, small wearable devices tend to have pretty small screens, making it difficult to enter something like a PIN or a passphrase. It wouldn't be a very good user interface, especially if you are going to require them to enter it whenever they are doing any physical activity. Other biometrics can be more useful, like facial or voice recognition or fingerprint sensing. These are probably better than a PIN or passphrase, but the user would still have to be prompted often to authenticate themselves to the device. Plus, something like a fingerprint sensor or a camera takes up valuable real estate on small devices like wristwatches. That is what makes gait recognition so useful: spontaneous, frequent, highly available, and non-intrusive authentication. It doesn't require user intervention or knowledge of it happening, and it's lightweight and compact. It doesn't take up valuable screen real estate on wearables. Also, gait as a biometric has already been proven in previous studies to be a reliable form of authentication. However, the issue that arises is that it requires frequent sampling of the accelerometer sensor data, which consumes power. This isn't an issue for slightly larger devices like smartphones, but wearables like watches have much smaller batteries. And other devices like implanted medical devices might need to be long-lived devices with potentially invasive surgical procedures related to installing them. Someone's gait is also easily observed in public. Anyone can record another person's walk with the camera. It is not necessarily easy to copy or impersonate someone else from this information, though. So what is the attack model that is being defended against with this form of authentication? The main goal is to detect impersonation or spoofing attacks to fraudulently obtain healthcare benefits, as mentioned earlier. The main adversary is the active adversary, where someone gives their device to another person or uploads activity data from that of another person to imitate a genuine user. Another potential adversary is a passive one, where someone may change their own walking patterns to spoof the system. There are a few things that are being assumed in this model. We are assuming the data collected by the sensors is trustworthy. Device manufacturers will need to make the sensors in the wearables to be tamper-resistant to prevent manipulation of the detected motion data coming through the physical sensor or chipset. We are also assuming there are defenses already in place for the transmission of the data to the servers to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Again, these are things that healthcare companies will have to consider. There are also possible attacks that this paper will not address, including replay attacks and a physical version of a man-in-the-middle attack, where a monitoring device is placed between a user's skin and the wearable. There is also the possibility for computer vision to be used to derive the walking patterns of a user from a video of them to then be used in spoofing at a later time. The first two are considered already solved in other areas of research, and the last one is of unknown severity and requires more research in the future. So we have gone over GAIT and how it is useful for authentication, and we have gone over kinetic energy harvesting, but what is KEH-Gait and how does it work? Electric kinetic energy harvesting doesn't produce a constant or continuous voltage or current like a battery. It will move around or oscillate with the direction and intensity of the user's motion. This produces a sort of electrical signal that can be logged as data. This voltage output signal can then be used in place of an accelerometer to detect a user's gait to use for authentication purposes. The goal is to use KEH in place of an accelerometer to save power. Here is a quick diagram that demonstrates an accelerometer-based gait recognition system. Essentially, the accelerometer data is used to train a classifier for gait recognition. KEH-Gait exploits the voltage signal of the kinetic energy harvester for gait recognition directly. The energy harvested can also additionally be used further to power device components like the radio or the classifier itself. In the paper, they created a couple prototypes to do a proof of concept study. One prototype used an electromagnetic energy harvester, and the other used a piezoelectric energy harvester. They also used a traditional accelerometer sensor device to use for comparison. They collected data on 20 different healthy people while seeing how different variables would affect the gait detection accuracy. Some of those variables were sampling rate of the data and number of gait cycles used for detection. They also had the subjects use the prototypes in both indoor and outdoor environments and collected data multiple weeks apart from each other, with the idea being that the same person might walk a little different on different days. They ended up gathering over 300 seconds of sample data for each subject, both from the energy harvesting devices as well as with the accelerometer device. With the data they collected, they were able to draw a few conclusions. As shown on the first graph, a sampling rate of around 40 Hz is needed to get the highest possible recognition accuracy. Anything lower and the accuracy suffers, any higher and there are no measurable gains. They also found that an accelerometer being powered by a kinetic energy harvester would only be able to log sensor data at a rate of about 8 Hz. When running at its full sampling rate, though, accelerometer-based gait detection outperforms KEH-Gait with respect to authentication accuracy when only a single gait cycle is being considered. However, when multiple gait cycles are merged together using multi-step sparse representation classification, KEH-Gait results in similar recognition accuracy as the accelerometer-based system. They also found that KEH-Gait does indeed result in significant power savings. Even though kinetic energy harvesting only produces a very small amount of energy compared to the energy consumption of continuous accelerometer sampling, there is still an improvement on power usage due to the replacement of the accelerometer with kinetic energy harvesting. Kinetic energy harvesting also generates some electricity for the device. All of this results in up to a 78.15% reduction in energy consumption when detecting gait. This means that wearables would either not need an accelerometer sensor or at least would not need to continuously sample it. Less power being consumed means a wearable device could use a smaller and lighter battery. Here is a comparison of the results of the Piezoelectric energy harvester and the Electromagnetic energy harvester prototypes. The piezoelectric system seemed to outperform the electromagnetic one in all areas except cost. It has higher recognition accuracy and higher power output. It also has a smaller form factor that is more well suited for wearables. Unfortunately, it costs significantly more. The electromagnetic energy harvester was about 10% less accurate. This was probably due to the magnet being a relatively large weight compared to some of the weak vibrations and motions present when detecting a user's gait. In conclusion, KEH-Gait can eliminate the need for a powered accelerometer in wearables or embedded medical devices. It can reduce the power consumption needed to detect a user's gait by up to 78.15%. It's able to achieve a recognition accuracy comparable to that of accelerometer-based systems. In fact, it can be up to 10% more accurate than several other verified algorithms. The results are clear. It is feasible to harvest movement energy from a user and use the output voltage signal as a continuous authentication system for wearable devices.